Yo guys, what is going on? Blossom is back and welcome back to another episode of Top Drives and another episode of RQ10 to 100, where we conclude the series in terms of countries, where I talk about the best French car from RQ10 all the way to 100. Now, I was kind of dragging this one out, mainly because French cars, you know, I don't really like them here on the channel. I'm not a fan of how they look, I'm not a fan of how they perform, but we pulled through and I have made the list. Now, I want to say one thing I've learned about French cars is that they're either really good, like in the game, or they're really useless. So, there are going to be some cars in terms of some RQs where it's like, oh, that's the best French car for RQ11? Well, if you've seen the competition, as you will see over here, you would see there wasn't much to choose from. And then there's some other RQs where there is like one French car, like for RQ45, for example, the C2R2 stands out above everything in its competition, and it was a super easy pick. So it's a really interesting country to do this series on, but it is a series that I will do this country on nonetheless. After we conclude the country series for RQ10 to 100, that doesn't mean that the series will go away. I'll be doing things like the best convertible for RQ100, from RQ10 to 100. We'll go into niches, the best convertible, the best coupe, the best rear wheel drive, the best front wheel drive. The options are almost limited, okay? As long as the Top Drives can make final requirements, I can make something to use as a baseline for RQ10 to 100. But let's finish off the challenge. Let's finish off the countries, starting off with RQ10. It is indeed the Peugeot 402 Dalmart. I don't even know how to say that. But yeah, the Peugeot 402 is basically my go-to dragster for RQ10. When it comes to RQ10 performance tires, there really isn't much to choose from. The two cars that come to my mind would be the Suzuki Alto Works for the twisty stuff. Oh, sorry, no, the Suzuki K Works, right, for the twisty stuff, and the Peugeot 402 Dalmart for the drags. It has, this feels so wrong. It has a good 0 to 60. For its RQ, and it's one of the few RQ10s that actually hits over 100 miles per hour, so credit where credit is due. Moving on to RQ11, I'm going to give it to the Citroen M35, and this is where I need to pull up my notes to back everything up, because one thing about French cars is that I'm telling you what is the best in my opinion, okay, my opinion, and I don't even own many of these cars because I'm not a French collector. In fact, I hate French cars, but I did do the research, okay? So hear me out. The Citroen M35. It is the second best handling car over here at 62. The best is going to be the DS convertible at 63. The 0 to 60 is also very close at 19.0 and 19.1. So why did I choose the Citroen M35? Usually when I like to, have a bias, and I usually like to weigh towards the better handling cars. Well, here's the main thing. It is lighter by 500 kilograms. This is 725 kilograms. Compared to the DS convertible's 1,275. So yes, it's one handling less, but the fact that this car is so much more nimble, I believe will give it the slight edge. Now, moving on to RQ12, the choice I went for is the Citroen Zahra. I'm pretty sure someone has actually told me how to pronounce this correctly. The Zahra Picasso. It's the best hybrid of the bunch among its competition. Now, RQ13, I'm going to give it meme players can rejoice, because I'm giving it to the Peugeot Hoggar. The Peugeot Hoggar, once again, is the best middle ground hybrid car, and it is going to be the same reasoning for the RQ14 Renault Espace. The Renault Espace has the best MRA out of the competition, and it's the best middle ground car once again. Handling is decent. I mean, a lot of the RQ14 French cars are around the 68 mark, but the 13.20 to 60 makes it stand out compared to the Megane's 13.9, or another Espace's 13.8, or even the Renault Clio 14.3. Now, I know that this is heavier among, the Renault Clio is only 825, but the difference between this two cars is about 1.2 seconds. However, the weight difference between these two RQ11s was, 500 kgs, but the 0 to 60 difference was 0.1 second. So for that, I'm going to give it to the Espace. Now, moving on to RQ15, I'm going to give it to the Renault Clio. Now, why the Renault Clio is because it's the only one here that has traction control and ABS. It is the best handling out of all RQ15s, and it has the best MRA. That really isn't saying much though, because first of all, it's French, second of all, it's common, third of all, it's front wheel drive. So the best MRA in relative terms would be 46. Yes, the Renault Clio has 46 MRA, but it is the best out of all RQ15s. Once again, the best handling coming along with traction control and ABS. The Renault Megane does not have both traction control and ABS. As you can see, it lacks traction control. Now, moving on to RQ16, it's going to be similar reasons to RQ15. It will be the Peugeot 301, once again traction control and ABS, and it has the best handling. Also standard tires and medium ground clearance, and that usually matters a lot, but since, you know, JPT with the 4-wheel drive and the Subarus and all that, you know, the stocks for the Peugeot 301 basically dropped. But when it comes to French cars only, it's the best 16 in my opinion. It doesn't look too bad as well, at least from the front. Now next in RQ17, we're going to give it to the Renault 12 Gordini. Why the Renault 12 Gordini? It's because of that 0 to 60. 9.8 0 to 60 kind of sets it apart. When you look at the rest of the RQ17s and their 0 to 60s, we have 12.3, 12.8, 11.5, 10.8, 11.9. So the fact that it's under 10 seconds, it's basically a French dragster. It's also slightly better than the Renault 17 Gordini, 9.867 to 9.868. Very, very minute differences, and a slightly higher top speed at 115 compared to 111. And moving on to RQ18, now this is where my job becomes a little easier because now I don't need to crack at the stats to see what's the best car out of cars I don't even own, because for RQ18 I can tell you wholeheartedly from experience the Citroen ZX Vulcan TD is actually pretty freaking good. 55 MRA, and it's a great hybrid car with a combination of medium ground clearance, decent handling, and a relatively respectable 0 to 60. The Citroen ZX Vulcan TD, to put things into comparison, used to be, I believe, the best fast circuit common even. And then of course we have the Renault Fuego Turbo taking RQ19, 64 MRA, and a very low 0 to 60 when it comes to French commons. And because of that, I'm giving it the best RQ19 French car. I would say that from experience, this is the best one to use, but I would also give a shout out to the Citroen Visa GTI, which I believe used to be the best rolling fast circuit common. Really doesn't matter anymore with JPT shaking up the meta and the common rarities. But yeah, shout out to the Citroen Visa GTI, but I'm gonna give it to the Renault Fuego Turbo. Moving on to RQ20, I'm gonna give it to the Citroen CI, now the Citroen C1, sorry. Once again, the better handling car of traction control and ABS, and it's also lighter, coming in at 840 compared to the C3 Picasso's 1240. Moving on to RQ21, I'm gonna give it to the Renault 30. Once again, it's the best hybrid car over here, combining decent handling and low 0 to 60 among its competition. Once again, like I said at the start of the video, man, a lot of these cars, I'm choosing between two turds over here. I'm just trying to see which poo is shinier, you know what I mean? It's the same thing for RQ22, the Peugeot 405 or the Citroen AX GTI. I went with the Citroen AX GTI just because for the Peugeot 405, 70 handling for a standard tire car isn't enough. Even for RQ22, it just isn't enough. I'm thinking of the AutoZam, that's 21, I believe, and that gets 87 handling when you max it out. The 405 only gets 77. Yes, I guess that's not the best comparison because this is medium and the AutoZam isn't. But, you know, cars like the Chevrolet Cruze, which are able of hitting, 85. The 405 just, unfortunately, isn't good enough. So, the Citroen was just slightly better. It's not very good either, but it's slightly better. It has the same handling, but a much lower 0 to 60. It is lighter, medium ground clearance as well with performance tires. Moving on to RQ23, it's the duality of French cars. This one was a really easy pick. The DS5 stands out from the bunch. The only reason why I don't have it is because I used to have it, but I had it 233, which was a mistake. It was actually a very early game car because I recognized how good the handling was and how cheap of an RQ that it came in at RQ23. But it's a French car, and ever since I sold the one that I upgraded wrongly at 233, I just never really had the motivation to get a second one in 323 it. But out of all RQ23s, the best one I would give, hands down, the DS5. 24, I'm gonna give that award to the Peugeot 106 Rally S1. Now the Rally S1, the best handling of the bunch, a low 0 to 60. I mean, it doesn't have a good 0 to 60, that's what I mean, but it is pretty lightweight as well. Moving on to RQ25, I'm gonna give it to the Citroen SM 2.7 injection. handling. This one was a pretty easy choice, so thank God for that. It has 83 MRA and a relatively high top speed for an uncommon. Moving on to 26, it's a pretty popular car among the player base. It's going to be the Peugeot E208. The handling is atrocious, to be honest with you, and one of the main reasons why I never really collected it until recently. But a lot of people have said that this is good, and I can see that because the main value of the Peugeot E208 is the 0 to 60. 7.6 0 to 60 stock is a standout factor. It's even the 0 to 60 is way lower to the Citroen SM, and this is considered a drag car. This isn't a drag car. It's more of a hybrid. You would put this on like rain hairpin, or maybe even maybe rain fast circuit. But the main thing that makes the E208 stand out is that 7.6 0 to 60 with standard tires. Compared to other standard tire cars among RQ26 or French cars, you have 8.8, 9.2, 8.6, and 8.6. So their handlings are also very, very weak. To be fair, 68, 68, 70, and 69. So it really doesn't make the 69 of the Peugeot E208 look that bad when it comes to French cars. But when you open up the floodgates, especially when you bring in the the Japanese ones and maybe even some of the American ones, then yeah, the E208 looks like garbage. But moving on to RQ27, it was either the Renault Sport Twingo or the Renault Megane. Now, to be fair, DS4 has really good handling. I will give that a shout out. Really, really good handling, but 10.80 to 60. But yeah, I'm going to give this to the Renault Megane. The Renault Megane has traction control, ABS, and it has slightly better MRA. 68 MRA in the Megane compared to 62 in the Renault Twingo GT. Moving on to 28, this one might be a little bit controversial. I feel like a lot of people might go for the Citroen CX GTI, but I'm going to go with the Peugeot 406 Coupe. This is my favorite hybrid French car. I mean, it has a high top speed, a low 0 to 60, and decent handling. It kind of is a master of none, jack of all trades kind of car. RQ28, do I have the MRA? Yes, I do. 53.1 MRA, which isn't good by any means, but most of the cars in RQ28 are kind of around that 50 mark. The only one that stands out in terms of MRA is the Citroen CX GTI, which I will give an honorable mention to, but I tend to use the 406 Coupe a little more. Moving on to RQ29, super easy decision over here. Twizy F1, no discussion. Moving on to rares is going to be the Renault 5 GT Turbo. It's the best bang for your best bang for your buck at RQ30. The lowest 0 to 60 combined with the best handling. Moving on to RQ31, I'm going to give it to the Citroen Saxo VTS 16V. The best handling car out of the bunch and the lowest 0 to 60. Yes, sorry, not the low 0 to 60, I got that topsy-turvy. The best handling car of the bunch with the same 0 to 60 as the Citroen Saxo VTS. Now, the Citroen does have better MRA, but the difference really isn't night and day. So moving on to RQ32 is going to be the DS3 convertible. 87 handling, front wheel drive, and standard tires, also a lightweight car, coming in at 1,090 kilograms. Moving on to 33 is going to be the Renault Kadjar. Now, here's an interesting thing. I feel like a lot of people might talk about the Peugeot 306 GTI 6 and say, Blossom, why didn't you choose this to be the best RQ33 in your opinion? The main thing is, when you open up the floodgates and you compare these cars to basically every RQ33 in the game, the Peugeot 306 GTI, I can think of 5 RQ33 cars that I would use over the GTI 6, but I can't think of 5 better cars that I would use over the Renault Kadjar when I think about RQ33 and below. Or maybe even, raise the cap a little bit, RQ34 and below. I can think of 5 better cars to use over the 306 in, city streets conditions and twisty conditions. But when it comes to Renault Kadjar, when it comes to all surface tire conditions for RQ34 and below, among every car in the game, I can't really think of 5 better cars to use over the Renault Kadjar in situations where it's useful. And because of that very minute reason, I'm going with the Renault Kadjar. Because if I was just comparing these two French 33s in terms of, if I was just comparing these two 33s in just the context of French cars alone, I would give it a 50-50, to be honest. And that's why I open up the floodgates to compare them in a more general sense. That's basically how my thought process goes with this series, to be honest. Like, if it's a 50-50 within its own, bracket, then I open it up to compete with other cars in the game, among its RQ range. Moving on to RQ34, I'm going to give it to the Citroen C2 VTS. Amazing handling, very lightweight car, with medium ground clearance also. It has 67.65 MRA, compared compared to, I would say, its closest competitor, the Peugeot 306 Rally. The Peugeot 306 has 58, so almost a 10 MRA difference, and the weight difference as well. This comes in at 1,163 compared to the Citroen C2's 1,083. Now, moving on to RQ35, I'm going to give it to the Citroen C6 3.0L. Has a horrendous 0 to 60, don't get me wrong, horrendous 0 to 60, but it has a high top speed for a rare and bonkers MRA, to be honest, 85.9 according to Top Drives Club. Okay, there you go, it is a standout. Moving on to RQ36, I'm going to give it to the Citroen C5 Tourer. It is the highest handling standard tire Citroen Rare, coming in at 85 when you max it out. It's also an estate, and it has medium ground clearance and standard tires. Moving on to RQ37, this was a no-brainer, the Renault Laguna Coupe. The Renault Laguna Coupe is my go-to French car. It is the best, I would say, all-rounder, I would say, that combines great handling and a low 0 to 60 along with standard tires. The only bad thing about it is that it has low ground clearance, but it really doesn't matter because it has great stats. Even in the general sense, when it comes to standard tire cars, when I want to use a hybrid, if I'm not using the BMW i3S or the Mazda MX-5, I do tend to use the Renault Laguna Coupe quite a bit. Now moving on to 38, I'm going to give it to the Renault Safe Rain Turbo. The Safe Rain Turbo, the thing about this thing is that it has the MRA, decent MRA, at least a lot better than the only competitor, which is the Peugeot 508. It also has 4-wheel drive and low-ish 0 to 60 for its niche, along with medium ground clearance. And last but not least, 39 goes to the Peugeot 607 because it's the only one there. Now we move on to rares, ultra rares, epics, and legendaries, and this is where French cars really lack in terms of versatility. There are a lot of cars which kind of get the best of their RQ because they're the only ones there, and you will get to see a lot of this as an example when I move up the list. I don't know why I closed my notebook over there. I have more notes to look at. So the first one is going to be the Renault Sport Spider. The lowest 0 to 60, the best handling. MRA is horrendous, but all of the MRAs of all these RQ40 cars are pretty freaking horrendous anyway. The Alpine is the best one. It has the best MRA out of the bunch, but it has no top speed, so I can't even consider it to be a drag car. 41, super easy choice. The Peugeot 208 R2. I actually use this car in clubs a lot. Great handling, very lightweight car, and very cheap to use. It's the same thing for the Peugeot 207 RC. Out of its competition in RQ42, it has the lowest 0 to 60 and the best handling. So it is the car that I would go for. Then, no 43, no 44. We move straight to 45, where it's a super easy decision. It's the Citroen C2 R2. I don't know why that isn't wish listed. Amazing, amazing handling. Very lightweight car, coming in at 1,030 kilograms with a low 0 to 60. Great, great twisty car. And front-wheel drive car for clubs. Moving on to RQ36, I'm going to give it to the car that handles slightly better and has better MRA. 66 MRA. Not great numbers, but it is better than the 58 in the DS3 DS Racing. Now, moving on to 47 is the Alaskan. It's the only one there. And then the Renault Sport Megane. This car needs no introduction. This is the best super rare city streets medium car if you do not count prize cars. So very, very impressive. Moving on to RQ49, it was a pretty tough battle. French cars do have some pretty strong, 49s. You have the Renault R20 Turbo, which has a very strong niche, which is the high ground clearance 4-wheel drive car that handles pretty well. Better than the Ram Chargers, also lower 0 to 60. You have the Renault R21 that has that saloon tag and that front wheel drive tag. Sorry, I didn't even show you saloon tag and that front wheel drive tag. Decent handling and low 0 to 60, but in the end I gave it to the Renault Sport Clio Cup car, only slightly worse than the Lotus Sprint RQ49, of course. And honestly, that isn't even an insult. That's actually quite a compliment that it's only slightly worse. Amazing handling on this thing and very, very lightweight. Coming on to RQ50, I'm giving it to the better handling car in the Renault Sport Clio 220, and RQ51 is going to be the Renault Sport Megane 4RS. 5.5 0 to 60, 87 handling. Very, very, very good handling on this car with a decent 0 to 60 to back it up. Moving on to RQ52, I'm going to give it to the Renault Sport Clio RS 1.6 because it's the only one there. And this is where I get to kind of lay back a little bit because the list becomes really easy to make because there's no variation in terms of French cars at all when it comes to the higher rarities. Once again, Peugeot RCZR, best one there because it's the only one there. RQ55, though, the Renault Desire has a little bit of competition, but I mean, honestly, the competition is only there for participation points. It deserves the best 55 of the bunch. Maybe a small shout out to the Renault Sport Megane because it's amazing handling and medium ground clearance, but the Desire is really a standout. The handling is, amazing once again, very, very lightweight with a low 0 to 60. It's a car that I would even feel confident on putting on the quarter mile, but nothing longer than that, to be honest. Moving on to RQ56, there is no RQ56 to choose from. 57 is going to go to the Peugeot 205 T16 because it's the only one there. 58 is absolutely nothing. 59 is going to be the Renault Sport Megane 275 Trophy because it's the only one there. And then when we move on to the 60s, absolutely nothing until the Citroen Metropolis at 64 with the only option to choose from. I have to be completely honest though, the Citroen Metropolis is actually one of the worst RQ64s in the game, and I think it should be 63 or 62, but guess what? Even if it was 63 or 62, it would still be the best because it's the only one. It's quite sad actually when it comes to French versatility. The Peugeot 205 T16 though, in all due respect, is actually a pretty good car. Medium ground clearance, 80s niche, decent handling and four-wheel drive, and the Megane is a Blossom Choice car, it needs no introduction. Now we move on to epics. Once again, very easy to choose. The 306, the 207, and the 208 are the only 65, 66, and 67s. Even the R5 Maxi Turbo is the only 68. I promise you, I am filtering by all cars, and this is all that you see. Obviously, we're not including prize cars. There isn't a single 69 because, French cars, they're not memey enough, I guess. And 70 goes to the Citroen CX Experience. It's the only one there. Peugeot 907 takes 71. I don't know why this isn't wishlisted. 73 is going to be the Peugeot 407 Silhouette. And then 74, finally, a little bit of competition. I give it to the DS Servo because it handles slightly better, and also it is the lighter car of the bunch, coming at 1,400 compared to the Peugeot SR1's 1,525. Now, I want to talk about these epics for a bit. They're not very good. Like, half of them are not very good. Like, all the slick tire Peugeots, oh, they're fantastic. The 306 Maxi, the 207, the 208, fantastic. The Renault R5 Maxi Turbo is a pretty decent 80s car as well. But the CX Experience, the Peugeot 407, the Peugeot 907, they're not very great epics. I would say, though, that the Peugeot 407 is actually a slightly better version of the Campaign Camaro because it is lighter. And the MRA is still pretty good. Not as good as the Campaign Camaro, but it has very, very similar stats to the car. And I think it is slightly cheaper to use. I think the Campaign Camaro is 74. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, though. Now, moving on to 75, the DS Numero 9 Easy Competition. The best standard tire epic car in the game, and I really want this in my life, to be completely honest with you. 77, the Peugeot 908 RC. It wasn't even close, but the Peugeot E-Legend is a pretty decent car. 4-seaters, if I do remember myself correctly. Yeah, 4-seaters, if I do recall correctly, not remember myself. What? Medium ground clearance, 4-wheel drive, and a low 0 to 60, but the 908 RC needs no introduction. Amazing MRI. It's just a better Hellcat, and it really pains me to say that. Hellcat still beats it in the quarter mile, but anything longer than that, the Peugeot 908 RC is really the car that you want to use. Until you get to the test bowl, then the Hellcat is better again, because the top speed isn't very high for a dragster. For an RQ77 Epic, it's still high, but for an RQ77 Epic, you kind of want like 195 to 200 at that point. Moving on to legendaries now. I mean, everything here is just super easy. 82. Peugeot 206 WRC, the only one there. 84 is the Banana. 87 is the 308 Hybrid. This thing doesn't even deserve to be in the game. It is just trash in every regard. If I ever unpack that, it's getting sold on site. 90 goes to the Peugeot EX1. It has no MRA. It's somewhere in the 50s, but it handles well. 4-wheel drive. I do believe it is very, very light, coming in at 750 kilograms, and it has a 2.2 second 0 to 60. So what? It's no dragster. It's still going to get you value on the twisty stuff. 91 is going to go to the Peugeot Onyx, which I do believe has 105 or maybe even 108 MRA, incredibly high top speed, a lower 0 to 60 compared to the Bugatti EB110. The only reason why the EB110 is even 91 is because 4-wheel drive herder, whatever. Peugeot Oxia 93, the Bugatti Veyron 16.4 97, the Veyron 16.4 Super Sport 98, and of course the Bugatti Chiron at 99. None of these cars really need introduction. When it comes to the high-end French cars, like I said, French cars, they're either really good or they're either really bad. And the top 4 cars that you see here, well, top 5 really, or top 6 if you include the Peugeot EX1 and you exclude the Bugatti, they're all really, really great cars. The EX1, fantastic twisty car, and then everything from the Onyx and above are just known for bonkers MRI and an incredibly high top speed. But anyway, guys, that's going to conclude RQ10 to 100 for the country series, and I hope you enjoyed the series. I hope you enjoyed the journey. Let me know what you want to see next. RQ10 to 100 saloons, maybe. Saloons is one of my specialities, so I would know about those cars very, very well. Or maybe coupes, or 4-seaters, or 2-seaters, or slick tires. Let me know down in the comments below. But anyway, I hope you guys have a great day. Remember to stay safe, wash your hands, and blossom out. Peace!
Bro, this song just makes me so happy.
Me too.
Imagine being Asian in the 50s, looking nifty, leather jacket, looking sleek, look like Presley, look so deadly. Got a jukebox back at home, feeling jazzy, turn it on and play it slow, like the movies with the ladies.
They so fine.
Imagine being Asian in the 50s, looking nifty, leather jacket, looking sleek, look like Presley, look so deadly. Got a jukebox back at home, feeling jazzy, turn it on and play it slow, like the movies with the ladies.
They so fine.
Sit back, relax in my Bonneville Pontiac. Hold tight all night, cruise to Jacksonville
Atlantic.
Blonde hair, don't care, look like Leslie Brooks. Pin up girls everywhere with the drop dead look. Swing it side to side as we slow dance to the night, when I'll hold your perfect hand and take you out just for a ride.